Hey guys, Will here from the Brotherhood of Gaming, and Gene here from the Brotherhood of Gaming, and we just got through watching Tales of the...
There's so many damn Tales games, they just mix in together.
Tales of Vesperia, The First Strike, which is a prequel to the game Tales of Vesperia for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in Japan.
This is actually something that's been out for a while now. Yeah, it's been out since June. We finally got around to seeing it.
Actually, it's been out earlier. In Japan, and also probably on the internet, you probably could have found a Japanese version with English subtitles. So this movie's been around for probably in between 2 years.
It's kind of is a must-see for a Tales fan, because, like I said, how often do these English things come over? They come here in English.
So
as far as I know, though, it's only available on Blu-ray, so...
Which is okay if you have a PlayStation 3.
Yeah, now, I just want to buffer this first by saying, I don't know how good the movie would look at its full potential, because, like I said, I have a Blu-ray DVD, but I don't have an HD television. I mean, it looked fine the way I looked at it, but, you know, how beautiful...
It looked sharp, it looked pretty.
Yeah, I know you have one. If we saw on one of your...
It probably would have looked prettier.
Prettier, yeah.
And the sound quality would have been better.
Right. I want to start off by saying how, one of the reasons I like anime, and you kind of brought this up, is the fact that... It's hand-drawn animation. Like you said, it seems like the Japanese are because really gives a darn about hand-drawn animation.
As we were watching it and we were looking at like the forest backgrounds, I actually was just like, and then you looked at me like, what? And I'm just like, it seems like Asians are the only ones that give a damn.
Yeah, about hand-drawn animation, because everything nowadays, everyone has such a hard-on for 3D animation.
You know, like over here in America, at least, I know animation is hard. It's time-consuming, but it seems like either Disney or anybody in Japan gives a damn about trying to do this right.
You know, well, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like a parallel between practical special effects and CGI.
You can use a combo of both. In the movie, this movie does it.
It does it, but there's just something like, when it comes to practical effects, I guess you feel more of a connection because something is there. When there's a hand-drawn animation, I don't know, it just seems like there's more...
Life.
More love, more care.
Because everything is moving.
Right.
Because with the way they do it now, like, I can't believe I would have mentioned this. Take Johnny Test, for example, where it's done... I'm pretty sure that whole thing is done in Flash of some sort.
Right, that's another thing, too, is when you see a lot of hand-drawn animation in America nowadays, like in that Flash style.
And it's all sharp edges and, like, nothing can move. It's horrid animation. Like, really bad.
I guess that's another reason why I'm such a big fan of anime, because, again, it's hand-drawn animation.
Yeah, like, you take anything by, I cannot remember, like, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo, all by the same guy. Like, everything moves. Like, all the strands of hair will move. It's beautifully done. And this movie doesn't... It's not as beautiful as Spirited Away or even those ones, but it's really damn close.
Yeah, I think it's done by Production IG, and you know, when it comes from Production IG, it's going to be good quality stuff.
It's really good, but...
Right. Let's see. Well, first of all, let's just say...
I played Tales of Vesperia.
I'm glad to say, first, did you like the movie?
I liked it.
Here's the thing. I liked it too, but I did have one problem with it, and that kind of leads into what you're saying. It was hard for me to it took me a while for me to develop a connection to these characters based around the fact that I really hadn't played much of Tales of Vesperia. If this was I played a little bit of it when you brought it over here when the 360 was still working, but like I say, if it was like Tales of Eternia or Tales of Symphonia,
you'd be spot on.
I would more, because I had to rely a little bit more on you.
Like, I kind of had to cut in between, like,
what's happening.
Like, we would pause and I'd explain this, like, what's a blast, like... And what's air, and...
Right, because Tales of Vesperia, it only came over here for the Xbox 360. And, unfortunately, we don't have a working Xbox 360, so I'm not back from there.
And that's where I want to go to, like, when I explain some of the things that I think are problems with this movie, if I'm wrong, you have to forgive me, because my Xbox 360's been dead for a long, long time, and I haven't been able to play Vesperia in so long. Granted, I beat the game, like, twice, but I do not remember anything. Of course I remember a lot of stuff. I'll remember major plots. And even some minor ones, but
it's a nice book stand.
It's not fresh in my mind. It's not fresh in my mind.
Yeah, it's nice doorstop.
I wish I could play it. I really do, but
when you come to movies that are based on video games or based around video games, it seems like there's two routes they could go.
You could go animation and by the producer, by the company, or you could go Hollywood.
Well, story-wise, I'm saying you could either like retell the story of the game itself, or try to do like a prequel. Or in the case of that Tales of Eternia Tales of Vesperia series, like a midquel. And they went the prequel route on this. And it was good, but at the same time, like I said, it's kind of funny because even though it's a prequel, it kind of does require for you to play the game to kind of understand. Because it opens up with this scene, and this is going to be there's going to be spoilers in here. We're trying, but it starts off where they're like setting up this like barrier, and I'm like, but they don't really explain what's going on, and the barrier shoots up, and then you kind of explain, well, this is what's happening. I'm like, okay. And I'm glad you did. So I was like, what's going on? What are they doing? What is that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, like all of these soldiers, the Imperial Knights of the capital, are setting up these Blastia cores in a circular area around this forest. And when they do that, they create a barrier made of air. And what happens then is a barrier is eternally, like, through, like, I guess you could say, like, an alchemy sort of look around the area. And monsters cannot enter that area. Yeah. And they always do that, and they build cities inside these areas.
It is very similar to, like, the alchemy from Alchemy.
And that's how people live. They live inside it, and everybody's dependent on Blastia cores, air. And I'm not talking about air as in the air we breathe. It's like that, but it's air spelled A-E-R. Yeah. And that's like floating power. Like, I guess you could say, like, say if you were to see, like, magic sparkles floating in the air with the other air that we breathe, it's like that, and trying to use the magic sparkles and gather them up and make power out of them. That's basically how it works.
The thing about these Tales games is that they all have their own source of where their powers come from. Like, you have in Eternia, it's Cremals, and Legendia, it's airs.
You got mana. You've got you got Cremal. You got air. You've got Ares.
Ares, right?
You got
so in this one, it's Blastia.
Yeah, Blastia. Okay. Or air.
Yeah. The story again basically centers around Yuri and Flynn.
Yuri Lowell and Flynn Scifo.
Yeah. They're childhood friends, right?
They're childhood friends. There are a couple of other characters,
but they basically show up in just cameo roles.
Yeah, and a lot of the other characters are completely made up, including like the two twins. They're not in the game period.
Okay. And
they're kind of, that's a little off-putting. It's like, okay, they play a major role here. How come I never see these girls in the game?
Yeah, they're in part of this this company of all these knights, and there's these two twins, redhead twins.
Now, one plot hole.
I think it's kind of funny. The only way to tell them apart is that one has bigger boobs.
One has tits, and the other one does not.
Yeah, that's what happens. I mean, you can't have an anime without one breast joke.
And at the end of the movie, there was one plot hole that I call complete bullshit on. It's Yuri's motivation.
Well, the thing about Yuri Lowell is that he's very different from a lot of other Tales heroes because he's very much like... I kind of see him as like the Punisher of the Tales universe. He's very much a ends justify the means kind of guy.
But that's the problem. In this one, he leaves because his captain dies. In the game, he explains he left because he hated how the Imperial Knights and the capital was handling things. And he went on to explain that... Well, when I guess there was this one city in the desert that had some problems, and they were all facing death, and the Imperial Knights weren't doing anything. They were there, but they weren't doing anything. And though Flynn, who I guess at the time was leader, he's trying to fight for a cause that will help this city, but not within the time span, like probably in the future, like say 10 years or so. Like finally we'll get a treaty, and he's like, okay, well we got a system going on. And Yuri hated that. He explained it to Flynn that the reason I left is because you're okay with going up to these people and saying, oh, well, we're sorry that you have to die today, but we promise we're changing things soon. Whereas Yuri would say, to hell with that, I'm going to find the effer who's in charge of the opposite side who's causing these bad things, and I'm going to kill him.
Oh, I didn't know that. That does make the ending of this movie a little... Well, before we go jump into the ending, I guess... talk about the basic plot of the story is the fact that I guess there's some air that's being contaminated and turning red.
Yeah, because there's a lot of condensed air and it turns red.
And when there's red air, it basically materializes. It kills the crops and forests around it, and then turns the animals into rabid, basically rabid creatures.
Yeah, and they have one Lambert. Lambert is he's like Rapide. If anybody's familiar with Rapide in Vesperia,
Rapide is in this movie too, and he's a puppy, so basically his only job is to look cute.
And he does that very well. He's very cute looking, and it makes you have feelings for Rapide too. You go, of course, by playing the game, you do understand Rapide and you get feelings for him already. But this one definitely helps you get a bond with him more by killing off his parent, his only parent, his dad.
So basically, something's making this air go as their power turn red. It's turning all these animals into killers, and basically it's like they start taking like forms. It's almost like red constructs, you know, where these where they like start blending into each other, and it's like these red, almost like made out of blood looking,
jelly looking tentacles,
tentacle things, and they start attacking the city.
Giant tentacles, and they just like thrust at things, and they'll
please
impale.
Please keep your tentacle rape jokes to a minimum.
Yeah, they'll impale people's arms, like impale all the way through, and make them part of them, and that's really weird because nothing like that ever happens in the game, which is interesting.
There was this one very intense scene where this red, like gooey creature is basically attacking the sides of the barrier, and the dogs go out into the forest to chase it.
And Lambert kind of knows.
Yeah.
He looks at Yuri and he's like, Lambert's the dog again, by the way. Lambert, he stops and he looks at Yuri like, I don't know, it's kind of weird for an animal to do that, but
yeah,
he just stops and looks like, I don't think I'm coming back from this.
Yeah. Well, basically, they and the dogs get merged into this thing, and they become like part of the tentacles.
Yeah, like evil Rabbit and Yuri.
Which turned out to be a pretty gory scene, actually.
It was. What happens is, aside from the Imperial Knights that are the good guys, there's also the Guild, which is basically anybody can form a guild, and they can be. It's like being hired.
They're hired guns, basically.
But not just guns. They're good guys,
right?
Or if they're paid to be.
Kind of like pirates, I guess, or just hired men who.
Yeah, they're hired men to do the thing, and they're looked down upon by the Imperial Knights because they do this for money.
Oh, it's like Star Wars bounty hunters. We don't need that type around here.
They do this for money, and they're looked down upon.
Yeah.
And first thing Yuri does is when Yuri and his friends are off duty, Flynn and the two girls, they go into a pub, and first thing Yuri does is start trouble.
Because here's these guys talking about how they screwed this one guy out of his money, and Yuri got pissed off, and of course started a huge brawl.
And it's like every single time.
And Flynn gets dragged into it.
Every time there's a bar in a movie. Like, can you count any movie where there's a bar and there's not a fight in that bar? Is there ever a movie that doesn't have that?
I think the story did a good job really fleshing out Yuri and Flynn and how they're childhood friends, but they have two completely different philosophies on doing things. And Flynn's basically is the fact that his father was also a knight but was killed for disobeying orders. That's why Flynn is always very by the book.
Which is weird, because even in the game, they never acknowledge that. They just say, in the game, what happens is Yuri and Flynn are kids, and as kids, they save up their allowance. They both buy one sword that they both play with each other with. They trade it off. They just practice and have fun, and they both say to each other that one day they both want to go and grow up and be in the Imperial Knights, and that's it.
A couple weird scenes is that where Flynn's like currently having these flashback scenes where the animation is different. Yet I didn't really see what the point of them were. Just basically him just playing with his father, or I guess I didn't see much point in those.
Yeah, there really is no point. Like, she just wanted to be a Imperial Knight. What was wrong with that?
Right. So Yuri is very, he's very, gun ho, very, emotional. He doesn't give a dang about, the rules.
Yeah.
We gotta save these people because you're just gonna sit around and do nothing. People are dying out there, and like the hell with rules. So there's a very good contrast between the two.
Or this is where I think the rules should have shifted. I think instead of Flynn going to the capital and talking to Alexei, you know who that is, right? Alexei.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of Flynn doing that, I think that should have been Yuri, because that would have given him enough of the pissed off, like, I don't like how the capital's doing this. Where even though Flynn came back and told him, I think Yuri would have been better for that role, even though Flynn was the one that is high-ranked enough to be sent on to do these tasks.
You see what you just said? I mentioned earlier, like, Vesperia, how I'm familiar with it. Now you mentioned that, it does kind of make sense. It doesn't really...
It kind of breaks it.
It doesn't fully connect to the game, or at least as far as Yuri's motivations go.
Yeah, because
basically what happens in this one is that the captain, and there's him, and then there's this blonde guy who has the glasses who's also there. The captain decides to disobey orders and to take his guild into the forest to try to stop what's ever condensing this air, making everything's red, disobeying orders. So So they march in, and I thought that sequence was done very well because it kind of felt like a Tales game where you're kind of going through the.
Oh yeah, because they take their time going through this place,
and they face the most dangerous enemy known to mankind.
The floor. The floor. And this actually proved really well how the floor can actually.
The floor actually kicks your ass in this movie.
Oh, wow.
Basically,
it's like silk.
Yeah, it's like the condensed air can not only control animal blood, but it also control objects.
Yeah, it can turn objects into things.
They're like demonic puppies, or not puppies, puppets.
Yeah.
You know, they make these giant golems out of the ground. They start attacking people. Which,
yeah, that was weird. I'm like,
none of the floor kicked your ass.
Like, none of this happens in the game, which is weird. I guess for the sake of a plot, sure, but it's a fan service movie, and there's very little you can take serious.
Well, they get to the end, they find the core, the thing that's condensing all the air. They stop it, but it ends up being an explosion, and their captain ends up dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was amazing because the scene was that one of the redhead twins got knocked out, and the captain picks her up, and as the floor is caving in from under her, he picks her up and throws her over the side.
Yeah.
Which is actually something that came from another movie I saw, Volcano, where this one guy was on a subway car, and there was fire all around him. He was carrying a guy, and fireman's carry, and he jumped in the fire, and
that's pretty common.
Yeah. Oh, dies.
Raven really didn't serve any purpose in this movie. There's no reason for Raven to be here other than to say Raven's here.
Raven was there.
The thing about Raven,
Rita was there.
Yeah, Rita, well, she served her purpose because she's the science. I don't think
Estelice. She was also there.
She was there, but
she was kind of the same thing. It was just
Estelice. It's good that she was in this movie because it at least shows that her and Flynn do meet at one point, and they do have a thing going on. But every time they meet, it's always kind of a one thing, and you got to be quick about it because she establishes that in the game.
Right.
And I like that they show that here. But one mistake that they almost make is when they talk about Yuri, because she's not supposed to know who Yuri is other than by name. Mm-hmm. And it almost sounds like she's met him once, which
I don't think she did. I think she.
It almost sounds like she did, but they cut it off.
I remember she said Yuri, who's Yuri, and then they cut it off. So that's probably what it means.
So maybe.
Yeah.
Raven. The thing I find this movie confused about Raven because for those of you who don't know, spoiler by the way.
Okay.
In Xbox 360, Raven is a double agent. He works for the Imperial Knights.
I never would have gotten that.
He works for Alexei at some point.
Right. I never would have guessed that.
He works for the Imperial Knights. He's a double. Well, yeah. He worked for them first. He actually has a suit and armor and sword and all that. He also works for. Actually, he's dead, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got a blasted core in his heart that keeps him alive.
Okay.
He also works for Don Whitehorse, whom I don't think knows he works for the Imperial Knights. Don Whitehorse is the guild master. There's a whole city. Well, not in this movie, but in the game, there's a whole city that is forged around guild members, and the leader of that city is Don Whitehorse, who is the guild master, and he made the rules. He has the guidelines. He's in Pirates of the Caribbean, the one who created Parlay. Mm-hmm. That's basically him, and everybody looks up to him as being the guild master. You don't disrespect Don Whitehorse. He's king.
Right.
You never see him in this movie, but they do mention him. Mm-hmm. Raven is kind of a messenger for Don. What happens to Don later in the game is not pretty.
Well, I'd say it's different when you have a guy who had more knowledge of the game and a guy who only played a little bit of it. What are the things that you specifically didn't like about the film?
We didn't see Carol, which was sad, especially with the guild involved. Mm-hmm. But I can live without Carol being there.
They mispronounced one city's town.
Chesladonia.
Yeah.
They call it something else.
Cheslatonia or something.
The subtitles don't match the words, and that just means they slapped it in there from the Japanese. So, whatever.
Yeah. Animation-wise, it's beautiful.
Yeah, what don't I like? I don't like that you could take this movie out and it takes nothing away from Vesperia. It doesn't tell you anything more.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because another thing about when you're doing a movie like this, I kind of was thinking about Final Fantasy Advent Children, where I like that movie,
but did
contribute anything to Final Fantasy VII.
No.
Right.
You could take it out and it doesn't change it.
At least with this movie, it's like attempting to like set up how things were before the game started.
And that's fine.
I don't know if it completely accomplished that. I did like halfway.
I'm not sure if it holds up well, especially with Yuri and his motivation.
It seems like that's when the movie got a little murky.
I like his relationship with Rapide, because that at least shows...
That was established.
That shows why Rapide chooses to follow Yuri, because Yuri chose to take care of Rapide after he blatantly killed his father, which he didn't have a choice.
Right.
So I like that. That was at least established. Rita, not much is done with her except for... Rita's here!
Yeah. Rita's here. Raymond's here. Estelisa's here.
Yeah, we got some characters in here for you. Everybody else is completely made up.
Right. So it's like I said, it's a story that basically centers around Yuri and Flynn. Because
Yeah.
they really are the two main characters of...
I really don't like how they just add characters for the sake of story and we never see them again. Because those two girls, what happened to them? Where are they?
Okay, well, I guess it's kind of interesting. I guess as a prequel to Vesperia, the game, it's a little lacking. But as a standalone movie,
it's still kind of lacking because, again, I had to explain things.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing.
Because you're going to get, if you don't know anything about the series and you just picked up an anime movie, this one, you're more than likely going to get a little confused at it. You might want to watch it a couple of times. Just
so it's a little confusing. I mean, I like the film.
I like the
film.
Yet
I can see that there are problems with it.
There's flaws that I have a little...
Right. Yeah, as like, it's definitely a fan service movie. Now, it's a well put together movie. I mean,
I like
the
it.
animation,
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. There's a lot of good action scenes in it. There's a nice there's a nice action scene at the end where they fight the big bad guy.
I think the ending could have been a little more better because
but it was still good. I mean,
it was still really good.
We've seen a lot of endings where it's just like 40-second fight and it's over. At least this one really went good. It's a fight between Yuri, Flynn, the final bad guy, and the fighting inside a library, which is actually kind of unique.
It's weird. It's like that kind of bothered me. Like there's a lot of fighting going on in this library, and this fight lasts for a a bit. Nobody else here. Nobody hears this. They're fighting in the Knight fucking Academy. No other knight can hear what's going on.
We got bookshelves falling. We got books being turned.
We got alchemy going on.
We got windows being blown.
There's explosions going on. We're in a Knight Academy. No one else hears this.
If it was me and you in there instead of Yuri and Flynn, I'm like, help!
Where's my team? Where's the brigade? Where's the brigade that we are in?
Reinforcements, please! We're getting our asses kicked.
So that was funny. Darn, I forgot. Oh,
it still was a good fight.
There are some predictabilities. Like I knew the captain. I knew he was going to die.
The voice acting. You mentioned that you don't think the same voice actors from the game.
I know the voice actors didn't return. I think a couple of them did, but most everybody else was played by entirely different people.
The only guy I recognized voice, of course, was Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher
Zod as the captain.
So. Flynn Shifa, I think, came back to reprise his role. Everybody else did not.
Which I'm fine with, like I said, because
But I'm not one to complain about voice acting much.
Right.
As for the ending, I think I would have liked it if they had introduced Duke on his little adventure.
Well, the whole thing about the ending is that we find out that the blonde guy with the glasses was the guy who put the core there. And basically he's been doing experiments with Blastia and to try to make a new type of Blastia. And he lost control of it.
And it's not the first time it's happened.
And he's made sacrifices. Again, insinuating that maybe he was responsible for
the death of Flynn's father. Which we never cared for in the game, nor was ever brought up.
Now, I think what would have made that better is if we kind of found out that the blonde guy, was he a standalone guy, or was he doing it under orders from the government or from the military?
I wouldn't be surprised if Alexei had something to do with it.
Because if it was that, and if that was discovered, I think then that would give Yuri more of a reason why he hates the military, or hates
Yeah.
You know what I mean? More like because it just seems like they fight, and then all of a sudden he leaves at the end. And right.
Like why?
Well, how would you improve the ending to make it connect more to the game?
Well, I'd have added a little more. I'd have made it a little longer.
This is actually a pretty good length movie. It was like, what, an hour half, hour 40
Yeah, hour and a
minutes.
half. I probably would have had Yuri just like sitting to himself with Repeat and just going in his head all of the times where the government has just completely screwed over everyone and where he just feels like it's not helping. That would at least shut me up with his motivation.
Because Yuri is very much comes off as like an
He's an
government.
Yeah, he's anti-politician.
Anti-politician, anti-government.
He basically speaks, and well, he does what we're all thinking when it comes to the government in real life. Like, why don't they just do this? Why don't they just do that? He's the person that does that.
And I love in the game that, you know, if you do wrong, he'll just straight up kill your ass.
And what's really funny is, like, some of the DLC outfits, like, he can have, like, a mafia hat where it's covering his face.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
He'll just straight up murder your ass if you do wrong. So that's why I say he's kind of like the Punisher of the Tales series. He's very much like the means justify the ends. Where Flynn is very much, you know...
By the book.
By the book. You know, I don't like what this is going on.
Justice.
This is, yeah, it's about justice.
Broken it might be.
Yeah, he's a little more black and white, while Yuri's a little more...
One thing that gave away the captain's death was early on, very early, like right in the beginning of the film, he takes a pipe and he lights it up with his Blastia. That pipe is what Repeat has in his mouth.
Oh.
I'm like, he's not going to have that later.
Yeah, Repeat, of course, is the dog in Tales of Vesperia, and he has a pipe in the mouth.
The thing about Repeat in the movie is, like, he finds different things to put in his mouth. Like, he starts off with a twig, then later you see him with a bone, and then he looks down and you see him with a spoon, and then at the end of the movie he's got the pipe.
Right.
How he got that, I don't know.
Well, closing thoughts on this movie.
It's Advent Children. It's pretty. It's good. Like, you could probably take a few things from it and be like, okay, I understand these characters a little more. I like them a little better. Some things don't fit too well with the game, but again, it's been so long since I played the game. I might be wrong about some things, but as for Yuri's motivation, I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Right.
But that's pretty much all I got to go with.
Yeah, you know,
it's very pretty looking.
Yeah, I guess that's another tricky thing when you make a movie like this based on a video game is you have to try to make it connect to the story. And video games and movies are two completely different things. And
with the Tales series, what they've really gone the anime route. There's a lot of them.
Right.
Like, this one's a prequel.
You know, another thing, too, is we kind of thought about it. Tales of Eternia had, of course, a miniseries, 12-episode series.
13.
13, I think. It's like a midquel,
yeah,
but it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, when did this happen in the game?
And a lot of people don't really like it, and I can see why, because of the following.
Well,
the characters are out of character. Farah was extraordinarily bitchy.
Almost unlikable to the point where...
Yeah. Reed was kind of a little out of place, because in the anime he seemed like he really didn't care a lot more than he really didn't.
Well, if I think about that, I'm assuming that takes place just before they go to Mount Farley.
It is, because they have all the Kremls.
Yet, in there, they're at least on the other island, on that island for about a week. Like the whole time. You know, aren't the planets going to collide? Remember, don't we have to go to this?
Well, that's what Farah was going on about. And Meredy seemed out of character because she was the one that wanted this the most, and she's just, like, wasting time.
But then you have other animes
like Tales of Symphonia.
Or this, which just follow the story of the game.
Perfectly.
You know.
And they're really long animes as far as I know.
Right.
Tales of Fantasia plays like a movie, and it does very loosely follow its own story.
Fantasia's another one.
Very loosely follows its own story.
Yeah, it's like...
There's a lot wrong with the Fantasia anime.
Right, but it's still fun to watch.
It's fun to watch, but there's a lot wrong with it.
Well, it's just like I said as far. So I see what they were going. So okay, instead of trying to follow the events of the story, let's make it a prequel.
That's fine.
And that's fine. Like I said, I love prequels.
We have yet to get a sequel.
Yeah.
From an anime standpoint, which would be pretty cool.
So as a prequel, it kind of works, but kind of doesn't.
It's okay.
It's a beautifully animated movie.
A lot of you might find it
done well.
A lot of you might find it boring, in all honesty.
That's another thing too. There's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of things that happen that you have to be familiar with the game to know.
There's a lot of slow parts. I mean, the action is few in between.
Right.
So there's a lot of points where you're just sitting back and watching these guys
So
talk.
even though it's a prequel, you kind of have to be familiar with the game to really know what's going on. Right.
One would hope.
So it's a good story. It's a well-constructed story. As a prequel leading into Vesperia, I guess it's a little wanting. But overall, if you're a Tales fan, you should enjoy it.
It's not bad. If you're a Tales fan, you'll like it.
Right.
Anyway, we'll come up with more of these reviews if you like them.
All right.
Later.
Thanks for joining us.